There you go. So do you want me to? Very good. So today we are on chapter 31. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So we are leaving the indicative verbs and we are getting in the non-indicative. This is not really a big change for us, probably because we already have been doing the participles with that they behave just uh, similarly in terms of time and aspect than the not indicative verbs, even when they are not verbs, right? Adverbs, what they do is to modify verbs or nouns. But now we will see the not indicative uh, verbs. Uh, do you remember what not indicative uh, would describe for us? Or what would that tell us? What is the difference with indicative?
Uh, I'm gonna go out on a limb. It might not be the dictionary phrase, but uh, a verb that implies something plainly or directly as you see it. I don't know if that makes sense, but it indicates that it's happening
Mhm.
without
That,
much. Uh,
that would be indicative or not indicative.
I would say indicative.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah. So what would you say about not indicative?
Um, I remember, talking about the subjunctive at least in particular, and it is subjunctive and not subjective, right? Yeah, subjunctive,
Yes.
Yeah.
and it being like the
Subjective.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Uh,
I'm sorry. Yeah,
no,
it's
you're good. You're good.
subjunctive.
And it being kind of, it has to do with the author and the author's understanding of what will take place or what'll happen or something like that. It's been a couple days. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, indicative shows like an action that is taking place. Non-indicative is one that like it might take place or it may happen. Is that a way of
Yeah,
looking at it?
yeah, yeah, you got that right. Especially on subjunctive. Yeah. There are different not indicative verbs, like some would express um, different things. Like in some subjunctive, as you mentioned, it can express probability, possibility, some kind of exhortation. And we will move into other kind of verbs like imperative and different ones that would express command and things like that. As Jake mentioned, the indicative would have to do with something that is a fact. It's describing a reality. Even when it's a lie, the speaker is describing it as a reality, right? So it would go on the indicative mode. So it doesn't, just because it's in the indicative doesn't means it's 100% real, but at least it's being exposed as a fact, right?
So
While the
no,
non-indicative would describe different things, but we are focusing on subjunctive that would have to deal with possibility, probability, exhortation, and so yeah. Go ahead, Sam.
no, you kind of explained what I was going to ask, that side of it. So it's like when the people were when the group was saying that Paul and them are causing an uproar, it's a lie, but they're saying that it is happening.
Yeah.
It's still indicative in that sense.
Uh,
I don't know if they're using indicative.
What is the example you gave? I didn't got you. Sorry.
When Paul and them were preaching, a mob said that they were causing an uproar in the city or causing, troubles and stuff like that. So they're speaking as a, because it's a lie, but they're speaking it as a fact that it is happening, and that's what makes it indicative. They're not. It may happen. That would be subjunctive.
Yeah, it will describe what is a reality for the speaker.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the idea. I haven't checked honestly what verbs are used in that context.
Yeah.
Probably would be interesting. But that's the main difference between indicative and not indicative. Indicative means it's a fact, or is at least for the subject who is talking or writing. It describes something that is real. Um, is not just possible or probable. Yeah. In fact, well, in English, uh, subjunctive is it's usually preceded by the if clause, right? Like if I were in the Greek class with Damien, I would learn more. So that would be a possibility, right? If I were uh, Jake, I would have a debate with Wednesday defensor, right? Um, so one of the interesting things about this not indicative is that, as I mentioned to you, very similarly to participles, uh, the not indicative will never express uh, time on the verb. You can have two different tenses on this not indicative case, which we are studying, which is subjunctive, not subjective, subjunctive. You would have two main tenses that would be present tense and aorist tense, but none of them would be ever translated like present or aorist, trying to express time, right? What we are really considering is uh, aspect, right? So if you have the present tense, what kind of aspect would it uh, reflect?
Present, ongoing.
Present. Yeah, that would be. Yeah. What do you say, Damien?
Imperfective.
Yeah, that's the answer I was looking for. And what about if you have an artist?
Past.
A
No.
past without reference to duration, like when it
Uh,
ends.
You're
it
looking
would
for perfective.
perfective is the word I am looking for.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, okay. I
yeah,
thought.
perfective.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's that would be more like an undefined action, right? Hmm. So those are the only two tenses you would be using for subjunctive, and sometimes because of of the construction of the word, you could be tempted to think that you are dealing with a future verb, right? Sometime a sigma will be there before the connecting vowel, but remember that there is no future subjunctive ever. You only are dealing with two verbs. So You will never have like a future subjunctive. So don't be confused by that. One of the things that is good is they use the same endings, primary endings. So you are very accustomed to it. It's nothing new uh, uh, in that sense. And the maths, as we sometimes call it, is very easy to follow. Like for the imperfective or present subjunctive, you would have the present tense stem. Then, something that is very important to keep in mind is, and probably this is one of uh, the lags that would tell you, well, I mean, I'm before a subjunctive, probably, is the connecting vowel would be lengthened. Lengthened? How do you say
Plankton.
that? Lengthened, yeah. So it would be either uh, omega or ether, right? Uh, Instead
Mm-hmm.
of epsilon or omicron. So that's a good thing to keep in mind to be able to recognize subjunctive, the lengthened connecting vowel. So you would have the present tense stem, the lengthened connecting vowel, and then the primary personal ending. And for the perfective or aorist subjunctive, uh, remember you would have the unaugmented aorist tense stem. And here I have a question for you. Do you remember why this is unaugmented? Uh, Unaugmented
Is
aorist tense stem?
augment deals with time, and there is no
Mhm.
time in that.
Yeah, you're right. You're very right. Yeah. It's, as I told you, it's pretty much like participles, right? We don't use the augmented either for participles. So you would have the unaugmented or tense theme because all you will reflect is aspect, not time, as Samuel mentioned. Then we would have tense formative plus the connecting vowel that would be lengthened as well. So it would be an omega or eta. And then the primary personal ending.
I
Um,
I had a question.
sure.
Me and Jake were talking about this, and maybe it's got a simple answer, but so like in the paradigm, which 31.9, you have luo, which is the same as luo, and it's like, well, how is it context that will tell me if I'm dealing with the subjunctive instead of just a regular luo?
Mm, yeah,
Because
that's
that's been my thought on it, is like, okay, when it comes to translating, and I guess like context is going to play a bunch in how it is, but I just wanted
yeah.
to see y'all's thought.
It just look the same, right? In fact,
Mm-hmm.
in the paradigm, you can see the indicative. It just look the same.
Mm-hmm.
But if you remember, uh, well, yeah, if you're doing a parsing, it's like you have to decide either one or the other. I would decide on this part of the book doing my parsing. I would decide for the subjunctive since is what you're studying, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Probably it's better to ask Dave if he wants both or what, right?
Yeah.
But the context would tell you once you're looking into the sentence, since there are other indicators that probably you already know. We're just doing a review, but if you remember, there is some indicators like hina or uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, and uh, so once you see those things, or well, you have in the 31.18, you have some others like and os oku and eos and sorry. So you have different indicators that will tell you as soon as you see them. Oh, this is definitely uh, subjunctive,
Yeah,
right?
where luo will be just by itself. These will be in the context of it to tell us,
Mm.
okay, we're dealing with the different luo here. We're dealing with the subjunctive luo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not necessarily every time,
Yeah,
but
that's Greek for you.
that's Greek for you. So the nice thing about Greek is when you do see those things, you know for sure.
Hmm.
Don't you do have to do a little bit more building out to figure out if the context fits in
And I
the
guess that comes with like literally translating it and then going through and do your proper translating and seeing, okay, well, this luo, obviously they're using.
yeah, and you might look at the greater context and say,
Yeah.
well, he's not saying that it happened already or whatever.
Yeah,
You'll
that's
be
what
able
I'm
to,
saying. Like, how we do like the just literal translation. Hey, this word means like you might do this, or with this part, hey, the context. He's hitting more on like a subjunctive type of thing than just a regular like luo.
And might is the key word because not only is it used, but it's also when you see these indicators, it says probably it is subjunctive. So it might be subjunctive. It likely is subjunctive, but it's not really a mandate per se, which is
yeah,
frustrating to me.
yeah. I mean, because there could be more than one verb in the sentence, so
Okay.
we just kind of have to be on our game as far as recognizing things and understanding also. Like it's one thing to know like what the word means generally. It's another thing to remember, oh, this looks the same in the indicative, first person singular and the subjunctive first person singular. It's another thing to remember that. So whenever you kind of start recalling those things, that expands, kind of the potential of your translating ability.
hmm
Yeah, I kind of second what Sam said in a couple ways. I remember talking to him, and I think I don't know. The further we get into it, just I'm not able to really memorize anything. It's just like, okay, just here you go. Like, here's information each. Because I told Sam, I said there's 8 distinct paradigms, but there's 10 technically in the chapter if you include me and then the combinative subjunctive. I'm just not able to remember all that. It's just not happening.
Yeah.
I mean, there are clues and indicators, and all this other information in the. I'm just not able, and I don't think you or Dave or anybody requires us to know it all, but it is just kind of
just me.
Yeah, I was about to say Andreas does.
yeah. It
In fact, that's his next question to you.
it just feels like a
I,
lot. I think
yeah,
I mean I'm getting it, like we're getting through it. It's just not I'm just not able to memorize it, and I think and two, I think I shared this with Dave as well, that there are just a lot of things that Dave does a great job, but there are a lot of things he can't get to in the amount of time it takes to teach through a chapter. And those things are the ones that kind of bother me, the things we can't quite get to. Like, and I mentioned this to him, for the subjunctive, you only have present and aorist. So my first question is, where are the others? Then I look into it and I think, okay, well, the present tense has, which I always associated tense with time. Maybe I shouldn't do that because in the subjunctive it's not. That's the second question. The third question is the present has a middle passive, and the aorist has a middle and a passive. Thinking, okay, there's another question. And then, how in the world do you translate them? Whole another question. You have the idea of luo that was bothering me. Like it's the exact same. Maybe I got my parsing wrong back in the day, and just a lot of. And there's more. It's just kind of off the top of my mind. I don't know. But I feel like I'm in the place where like somebody who's agnostic is reading the Bible and they're reading all these inconsistencies in the Bible and they don't realize, oh yeah, that's why. And it says here, like two books away about it speaks on this. And I'm just kind of sitting in the inconsistencies.
Hmm.
That's how I feel. But I mean, I'm getting it, but I'm not really learning or
What what
digesting
what
at the moment.
what if we finish the review and probably we go back to some of those questions
Sure.
and then uh, we could do two things that are decisive, or how you say that, decisive. You can recite the all the paradigms from memory to approve
Oh,
this class, and then we will check your Lua parsing, because
mm,
that changed the whole course of your class in Greek. If you didn't make that right, probably
mm.
we
Changes how
cannot
nice
have you.
Andres is going to be in Greek.
we, we, it could be like gracias adios Andres.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I'm
Oh,
just joking. I understand pretty much what you say, Jake. Definitely, it's a lot of information, plus you are taking a lot of other classes and put all things together. Plus your work with the church. I mean, you both are working with the church while you're studying, and I understand that's a lot. That's a lot. You have a lot of responsibilities, and sometimes all of these can be overwhelming. But remember to keep the focus of this. This is not to create any bothering in you. This is not to create any stress in you. This is to equip you so that whenever in the future you are going through the text and you think, well, probably I would like to see the way how this is said in Greek. You can go and check with your tools and probably come to better conclusions uh, than if you never got any Greek at all, right? So
mhm.
definitely we will not be called to do a new translation of the Bible, but at least not on this point, right? If you are really successful on this and in the future you become a scholar on Greek or whatever, I'm sure you could do probably a better translation without some of the mistakes some of the current versions already have. But my point is, right now the point is equip you to be able to recognize things in Greek and be able to read it and think through it, and not just to see a bunch of characters in other language, right? So don't feel overwhelmed, in the sense that all of us will be very patient and we are willing to be there with you. Probably some of the questions you have, we also have them as well. But there is an answer for all of this. And don't feel like you're failing or anything, because you are so close to the end and you have been doing it so good that frustration is very easy on this point. But you are like 2 months away to finish this class, so just keep going. And uh, I mean, I'm proud of all of you, all the effort you're doing. You're studying, you're taking several classes, you are working with the church, you have your family, so you're doing it great. Don't allow a bunch of paradigms to make you feel overwhelmed. And if I was able to make it when I was taking this class, definitely definitely you who are smarter than me, you will be able to do it. So uh,
I
what if
appreciate
we
the
just
kind words.
you're very welcome.
He was
So
talking
let
to
us
me.
Oh,
voice, you're funny. That's very humble. That's very humble, Samuel. Uh, okay, so where we were at, uh, let me check. Mm. Oh yes, so we have different indicators like Hina and um, we can see different uses of subjunctive. Like in 31:16, you can see there is a hortatory subjunctive, right? It would be like a kind of exhortation. But you can have also questions and answers given on the subjunctive. So it is not necessarily all the time a possibility or uh, a probability, but in the middle of the exhortation uh, or the question, you can realize the subjunctive will give that sense of uh, different situations that can be developed according to the receiver of the information react, right? Uh, when something is uncertain or the exhortation can we will see different different examples uh, for today probably in this, but it's good for you that it will not be just a plain sentence all the time describing a possibility. It can be an exhortation, it can be a question, or even in the answer to that question, right? um, what else? It can be used sometime on negation. Uh, and I think that would be like uh, probably I would like to go with you on the three signs of the subjunctive again, so that we can have that fresh. It usually would be following hina or ean. Uh, it will have the connecting vowel that is lengthened. I mean, omega or eta, and you will see there is no augment in the aorist. So when you have all these three, you will be like, well, this is definitely a subjunctive. It is not lengthened. Sorry, it is lengthened. It doesn't have the augment. You can see the and before of it or the hina. Uh, but there is a probably I would say it's a fourth one, uh, at least for the negations. Do you remember the particles for negation we use, or the ways to
I
express
just
negation?
I just remember talking about how usually ours cancel each other out if we use two no's, but or two negatives. But there, it's more for emphasis, and there's like the ooh and the
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, u and me. So for subjunctive, you will always. I mean, I think this is not for subjunctive, but also for not indicative ones. You will have the use of me. And by the way, that reminds me of the exegetical insight on this chapter. I think Jesus do a strong negation and you can find that in page 352, uh, talking about how his sheep would not perish. On, I think that's John. Yeah, John 10:27 and 28. It says, "Ume apolontai." The double negation. It's like a strong uh, combination of that would give this idea of there is no way they will be perishing, right? Or there is no way they would uh, uh, will perish ever, right? So that's another clue you have. Not indicative verbs will use the me on the negation.
362 shows both of those being used. Page 362.
Let me see. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Negation. Yeah. May is used to negate everything else, including subjunctive. And when I say everything else or the outer, he means the indicative, right? So the combination u me followed by the aorist subjunctive is a strong negation, stronger than simply saying u. The two negatives do not cancel out each other. They strengthen the construction to say no more emphatically, right? No.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
I like the emphatic.
ume is what Paul says in Romans 6 and verse 2. And he says, shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? Ume.
Oh, great.
Okay, so
That's
it's
a
this.
very good example.
So it's this really big. Yeah, I think that's cool because, like, for us, it's like, may it never be. But Paul is really emphasizing no
Yeah.
with the ume. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very cool. I think his the context is when he asked, right? Will we persevere and sin so that the grace may abound, or something like that, right?
Mhm.
Be abundant. Yeah, yeah. It's no way, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the Spanish translation. In no way. Yeah, very
Mhm.
good, very good. So, would you like to add something else, Damien?
I can't think of
Can you
anything.
can you think on any new Greek rule to add in the book?
Ume.
No way.
No.
No.
No, there's enough Greek rules,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
half of them contradict each other. Usually,
Yeah. I think there is a word how they call it, or there is a word for this little uh, when they say, "Well, this is the only case when this happens," and or things like that. What is the word for that? Exceptions.
Mhm.
They have exceptions for exceptions.
Yeah.
yeah.
To give you an example of that, on 359, for the different uses of the subjunctive, it says the subjunctive has a wider range of uses than in English. The idea of probability is only one. And then it says the first two uses are in the dependent, the second two are in the independent. And then it says, notice how I mounts use may or might in the rarely use may or might in the translations. Use these keywords only to help you get comfortable with the subjunctive and are not always required. So not only is may or might kind of arbitrary, but to recognize whether it's subjunctive or not is arbitrary. And then, of course, how it fits in with a direct no, dependent or independent clause is also not necessarily arbitrary, but just a lot. It's a lot.
I think. Well, so may I add something here? Might I add something here?
You may.
So yeah, maybe the may or might is arbitrary. I think all that's doing here in this chapter is, teaching you to translate your when you parse it out, to translate it with may or might. It's just to get you in the mindset of this is expressing um, something that isn't necessarily indicative, right? It's not necessarily something that's a fact, something that's said for certain. Um, there's some different nuances associated with it, and one of them is probability, right? So like this may happen, but in all cases, there is it's not indicative, so it's not expressing something that necessarily is or will be or was or anything like that. Maybe from the speaker's perspective, because notice here on 360, this is Satan talking to Jesus, and he says, "All these I will give you if you fall down and worship me." And that worship, proskuneo, is subjunctive. So is it the case that Satan would be able to grant Jesus, you know, um, all the things that he said he could?
Well, I mean, depends on the case. Technically, I mean,
I
devil.
think so because he's referred to as the ruler of the world. I mean,
I think the implication is when he showed him the kingdoms of the world, the temptation was not that Christ couldn't, you know, he created everything. Now
Yeah.
he subjected himself to be a human, but ultimately the temptation was you don't have to go to Calvary in order to obtain these things. You can just have them. I relinquish my quote unquote limited control under the authority or hand of God to you. So you don't. Anyways, sorry. But yeah, I think there's, there is validity when the devil says to Jesus, "You can turn these stones to bread." I mean, he could have done it.
Yeah,
I don't think the devil could. Maybe he could. I don't think so.
I just don't know personally. Maybe maybe you think differently and could explain differently to me, but I don't think that Satan had quite the authority he was claiming to have when he said that I'll give you the whole world. I think in some sense that could be potentially possible, but ultimately the earth still belongs to God.
Mm-hmm.
And in my understanding, maybe you see it differently, but here's what I guess the whole reason I brought that up. When you get to a subjunctive in your studies, you're reading this, looking at this sentence in Greek. Kind of what I do is I don't necessarily go and retranslate it myself, but I'll hover over the words in logos and see like, okay, that's let's see, snatch. I'm looking at John 10:29. Snatch is a present active infinitive. No one is able to snatch. Okay, infinitive. That doesn't tell you much of anything. But there are times where you see like a perfect verb or perfect indicative or like John 10:28. It was that aorist middle subjunctive and the ume construction. You'll be able to bring out a certain emphasis in your preaching when you get to things like that you wouldn't normally, that you wouldn't otherwise. You got to be careful how you do it because you don't want to sound like a Greek nerd, but, which I probably have a few times, but that's okay. I mean, I think I'm experimenting with it and learning how to bring it out in ways that matter, ways that are effective for teaching.
Yeah, I think the example Dave used Tuesday was John 3:16, should not perish, but have everlasting life. I kind of get it. I kind of get the idea.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I mean, again, I'd have to do a lot more study on, like I mentioned then, like should, does that mean, I think it's predicated on, anyway, I don't want to open a can of worms there. Maybe I should. Who knows?
That's all. I don't have anything else, Andres.
Okay. So now that we finish the review, and before we go to some exercises, um, it, probably do you want to go through all those questions or some of those questions you mentioned, Jake, or you think you're
I, I pretty
fine? Or
much, I pretty much just am at the point where I just accept it. It just is what it is. Hey, if there are a middle passive for a present, and then there's middle, and then a separate passive for the aorist, I'm just accepting it. I'm just going to assume that it is what it is. That confused me at first, but you know, I'm just most of these questions are more or less just kind of help me understand, and I we can probably pass up on them.
okay. Um,
I think the one thing Sam and I struggle with, especially on these last few tests, is translation. I have no idea how to translate these things. So I'm just going to put may or might for the
Yeah.
subjunctive. And yeah, like for the participles, I kept wanting to do ing, and then I was like, it doesn't make sense for ing. And then, yeah, like the translation's always been an issue.
The participles I had more of a trouble. I have a not that it has gone away. It's gotten better, but I had more of a trouble translating the participles than I did than I do these with like the may or might. But I feel like another problem is like Bill Mounts in his book, like when you first start getting into like the paradigms, he'll tell you what the words mean or how to translate it, and then when you get to the participles, he doesn't say anything. Like
Yeah,
they'll have the
yeah,
word, and then he'll have
yeah,
like how to translate it beside it, or like a example to kind of go off of.
right.
yeah.
And it might be just because participles have more that they could say than what like a regular one is saying.
Yeah. Or in other words, usually, I think what Sam's saying is, in the past chapters, you'd have a paradigm, and then included within that paradigm is how you translate it too.
Yeah.
Whether it be for a verb or a noun, the paradigm would give you kind of what it is. But for this one, it was more or less, here are all these paradigms, and then we'll give you some clues here and there, and this is kind of how it's used, and the aspect, of course, being a huge deal, huge part of it. But I don't know. There were translation parts of the chapters, but I don't know. It just is a lot. So yeah, I kind of feel the same way with the subjunctive um, parsing. I mean, I think I'm at the point. Oh boy, we lost Andreas.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I have a couple things to add real quick.
Sure.
Since he's not here. One thing was I heard you say it earlier. I wanted to just offer a brief correction, and it's not a big deal because it occurs so little amount of times. But he said that there's only a present in the aorist in the subjunctive. There is technically a perfect combinative. You see it at the end of the chapter.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
But there's only 10 times that occurs in the New Testament, so it's not really worth spending time.
There's just no future in the subjunctive.
Right.
Or imperfect.
There is a sense in where you'll find it translated kind of in a future sense. That's called the future more probable, and that's what I think that's what was yeah. So when Satan is talking to Jesus in Matthew 4, that if you basically if you fall down and worship me, I'll give you all these things. There's a future more probable condition. I don't know why it's
So with what you're saying about Satan, with it being like a subjunctive kind of thing, it may happen. You don't know if it is kind of thing.
So here's how he describes it. A future more probable condition says that if something might happen, then something else will definitely happen. The speaker is thinking of a specific event in the future. So again, this is from the speaker's perspective. The speaker is saying, if you do this, then I will definitely do this. That's the way, at least the way it's presented in the language.
The if then kind of stuff.
We doesn't necessarily mean we should conclude that. Again, a different study, kind of more in depth, but doesn't necessarily conclude that we just because Satan says he will definitely give it to you. That one he's being honest, or two that he even has the power to do so.
Well, there's like. I can't remember. I think there's in like the Old Testament, just like there's a king that promises something, but he has no intentions of fulfilling that promise. Yeah. He's doing, and of course, that's not Greek, but like it's those if then kind of things. Oh, if you do this, if you surrender, then we'll give you safe passage. Well, that could be a total lie, but from the way the speaker's speaking, it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, at least that's what the language bears out, right? So it would just be like me saying, if you turn in your test, you're going to get an A.
Yeah.
That's, I could be lying, but the way I said it on paper is, if you do this, here's this will definitely happen. But again, I could be lying. It's not necessary. It's just in the language itself carries that notion.
I guess that goes with like the context of the person themselves who are speaking. If it's Satan, it's like the father of lies.
Yeah. Yeah. So you kind of get the idea. And the present general is interesting because it does kind of sound like more of a indicative type statement. If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble. That sounds very factual, but what it's doing is it's expressing a general truth, kind of an axiomatic phrase, almost like a proverbial type statement. Proverbs kind of share that general wisdom, and it's not necessarily true in every single person's case, right? This would be, but it's just the language that is being conveyed in. Lord, if you're willing, you can make me clean. That is a general statement. Let's see. His meaning is slightly different from the future, more probable. Instead of saying something about a specific event that might happen, it is stating a general truth, axiomatic truth. Subjunctive is appropriate because the truth of the statement is timeless. Interesting. Timeless truths. That might be a sermon, a Greek sermon.
Yes. Makes sense. Just trying to figure out, context and how to make it fit.
Definitely in your parsing, stick with the may might.
Okay.
But when you start translating sentences, you might need to use something else.
You need to if then do something else.
And if you need to, you can always like try to search the verse in your logos and see how other translations, other versions have rendered a certain phrase or whatever, and you can kind of see which one you think makes the most sense based on context, based on how you're translating the rest of the sentence. So, and that's another thing, Jake, that it's not necessarily about memorizing. It's more about recognizing that words behave differently, and kind of in my mind, it's not even so much about memorizing the paradigms and figuring out which form this word takes or whatever. It's more about when you see that a word is in the indicative or in the subjunctive or imperative or what have you, that you understand what that's conveying from the text.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. I know I'm not going to get it all, but yeah, being able to recognize it, and I think what you shared last week. I know Sam wasn't here, but it'd be good for Sam. I don't know where it was at in the book, but where
Well, it had to have been 29 or 30, right?
was it in 30 that you shared it? It was like it was when you said what the aims of the book were, and it wasn't like to memorize everything. It was more.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it was in the LMS, actually.
Oh, okay.
So let me see here. So I'm going to read this, Sam, and I'm going to give you my interpretation of it. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this is at the end of the course, students will be able to, and there are 7 different things that it says, and this is right in the section 1, at least on my end of the LMS. But number 7 says, utilize commentaries and biblical resources that require knowledge of the Greek language. And I think that number 1, that allows you to use commentaries and things like that. But number 2, really just using the tools that are available. If you can, in your studies, you might need to go back to this and review some things of how certain tenses or nouns or whatever part of speech it is, how it's used in certain contexts and whatnot. That'll help. And then using your Logos stuff to really go deeper, to bring out that depth in your preaching. So it's not all about memorizing forms and strictly the science of language. It is largely to bring out the art of the language and how you convey it and how you minister to people, how you convey in your preaching or teaching or whatever.
Yeah, we need all the help we can get. But I do like the idea of each time you preach a sermon, you glance over the Greek and see if there's any nuances or any weird. Of course, we do that instinctively when we look at different translations of the Bible and we see keywords that may be a little different here and there. We can go back and look, say, well, I wonder what's going on. Mm-hmm. But certainly with theological passages, I think that's where the huge implications lie, and where it starts getting a little tricky, where how much liberty do we have? And I think that's where you get huge Greek scholars. I don't know if I'll ever be one, but maybe. You never know.
Yeah. Yeah. So just a few kind of, this is very general, like things to note about your Greek studies. Where it comes in handy is when you get to things like the ACE debate in Acts 2:38.
Mm-hmm.
Dave did his dissertation on like 4 Greek phrases in the book of Revelation that had to do with these things must shortly come to pass, quickly, and those words. I think intake and goose. I don't remember all the different ones, but basically, it's not so. I think his conclusion was that it's not. And of course, if he's online or whatever, he might jump in and defend his dissertation. But I think what he was trying to get at was essentially, it's not that these things have to happen in the immediate future, but it's more conveying a sense of urgency to the readers. And so, like, to me, it's fascinating that the when you dig into the language, all that kind of stuff is uncovered. We lose some of that in our modern English translations, and if we only use what people have already translated for us, if we only use our English Bibles, then there are times where we're going to end up with a wrong conclusion. And that's why, for instance, the other day when I was telling you guys about the dative of piste in Hebrews 11, that in faith versus by faith kind of thing. And you might draw some different conclusions based on which helping word you use in English.
Well, it's like we were talking about with that ume, some versions may it never be, that kind of stuff. And I just feel like we lose some of the emphasis, the emphatic nature of what Paul is actually saying here. He's using a super strong, fusion of words, a combination of words to say, no, do not do this, that I feel like, in our English translation, we write it down the best that we can, translate it the best we can to our understanding, but lose some of that emphasis is what I'm trying to get at with, what Paul is saying here in the Greek.
Yeah, there's not a perfect way to translate that. Recognizing the emphasis is kind of the key there. Not so much.
Yeah, because for us it would be like if we're gonna do a no to really like emphasize it, be like all caps, that kind of thing of no.
Yeah.
We're bolding that thing, but we don't have something, I guess, in English without reading it to say no, that kind of emphasis.
Yeah. You have, I think, maybe like King James, New King James. I don't remember which ones translate it as God forbid.
Yeah.
And, while I understand what they're doing there, it's also you're inputting words that aren't necessarily there in the Greek. And so you could draw some different conclusions based on God forbid that you would from ume, right? If you let's just say we approached it and said, no, this verse means to say God forbid, as in okay. Have you ever heard of people saying that it's impossible to sin after you've been converted?
Mm-hmm.
They could easily take that God forbid and say, see there, God forbids it. He does not allow it. It's not even possible.
Yeah, just that changing of how the context of the sentence flows even.
Mm-hmm.
God forbids you can't sin. Yeah.
Yeah, but understanding what the Greek is doing there, it gives you a clearer picture.
Yeah.
Well, I feel more comfortable about the chapter. Definitely.
More comfortable than participles?
The
King James does translate that to God forbid.
Yeah.
Romans 6:2.
Mm-hmm.
And I get what they're trying to say. Like you're saying, they're trying to really emphasize that this is a no. But yeah, I see what you're saying with like how people can almost change it.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's stuff like that with learning Greek. I'm not seeking to be able to translate all of it, but it's that kind of stuff to be like, okay, he's using this ume here. This is something to really look at. It's those kind of things that are like that kind of makes all this study worth it to be like, okay, this is a big point that Paul's saying here. It's not just a no, it's something else.
Yeah. So in your when you teach this, right, instead of saying Paul here uses the Greek words ume and explaining verbatim like what textbook says about ume, you could just be like, the language that Paul is using here is so emphatic that he does not want anyone to sin.
Yeah.
You can see how like
it's also this like mindset of like he's saying no in such a way that it's like he wants you to get rid of the question itself of can I continue in sin? No, it's like a cutoff kind of no.
Yeah.
To me, that's what it stands out. It's like don't even ask that question. If you're asking that question, you're wrong. It's like you need to not even get close to that question.
Yeah.
I'll just scream it next time. May it never be.
Yeah. You just start going.
Yeah, just shaking the pulpit. No.
Yeah.
But no, that's the cool part of this, like this Greek study with that is to see, because like sure you look at like the translation side and be like, yeah, you can see, okay, this means doulos, it's all these other things, but you really see this emphasis on certain words that just our English translation can't produce like what they're trying to really get across.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I guess we've probably done all we can for today. Hopefully you leave a little bit more comfortable than you did coming in. And if not, it'll come. It's not the goal of every class to get you to understand everything that we've taught. It's just a matter of exposition, right? We're exposing you guys to these ideas and
I feel like with what Jake said, I feel like I have a more of a grasp of what these subjunctives are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think maybe just keeping in mind that it's non-indicative is a very big help. And so when you get to your translations, like sentence translations or verse translations, that will probably come in handy. Like you might see the word and think, okay, well that means to loose or lua. Let's not use it lua. Let's use like poieo, okay, which is poieo with the circumflex. That's to do or to make. You have that basic definition when you go into it, but then you realize, okay, this is not indicative, so it's not saying, I did make or I will make. It's more
I made.
Yeah. So that they could make, or that would be like a henna clause.
Mm-hmm.
If they make, or if we make, or do, or whatever. Just understanding that there's some either possibility being conveyed or something that's not necessarily here in the facts.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm probably not explaining it.
No, I get what you're saying. It's not, indicative. These things these things happen. There's certain kind of sense. But here it's like it may, it might, or if it does, then this will happen kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's kind of a
more like open-ended kind of thing, if that's the right wording to use. Like it's more of an open-ended kind of statement of like maybe, or might.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are certain cases where, like, you kind of what we talked about with the ume, like that definitely gets it closer to the, like, this is for certain. First, like,
Yeah.
certain don't do this or whatever. But um,
Yeah, that is the more certain, because even just like ooh, or may, those two separately have different kind of what they're saying in the sentence, in the
yeah,
context of the sentence.
even in the exegetical insight where it borrows from John 10,
Content.
27 and 28. I give them eternal life and they shall never perish. Even in that statement, you know, whether or not you conclude that it's possible to perish, you're in the future. You're from your perspective, you're in the unknown. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I do know that Jesus said I'd never perish. So again, some of these things are just hard to convey, like all the subtle nuances and whatnot. But
Well, like with this subjunctive thing, Jesus says never perish, but in using that, it's like, well, there's still criteria you have to do
yeah,
that
and
you won't, so that you won't perish.
that's a good point, because here the writer here is kind of suggesting that there he says that basically Jesus denies even the possibility of his sheep being lost. There's definitely a Calvinistic influence there. Once saved, always saved. But we know, based on what the New Testament says in other areas, that you can definitely lose your reward. You can have your lampstand removed, kind of thing. There's all this like continue in the faith type language in the New Testament for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much. It's hard. It's really hard to go against. But
Yeah.
well, thank you, Damien. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'll look over the chapter a little bit more if I get time this week, and yeah, we'll move on.
Yeah.
But appreciate you. What's that?
I said I appreciate you guys hanging in there. You're doing a great job.
No, we appreciate you and Andreas, even though Andreas isn't here. I'll still say it. I appreciate him.
He'll appreciate that.
Yeah.
Gracias, adios.
Yeah, adios. Adios, Andreas.
Thanks, goodbye. All right, you guys have a good weekend.
All right. You too. Bye.